What's going on, gamers? Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Max Deshaw with Based Game Reviews, and today we've got an in-depth review for God of War. Let's get into it. How I played. I played on PS5 with a digital copy. Story, 19 out of 20. God of War's intro is a slow burn that conjures intrigue, develops an atmosphere, and introduces the player to basic controls. It had me invested from the very first frame and never let go. Cutscenes. The game's use of close-up, intimate camera angles that are jiggly and lifelike play into its favor to help tell the story of a father and son on a bonding journey. While there are epic action sequences and jaw-dropping visuals, the camera never veers far from the action and holds you close to the drama. It's all done using the game's main engine, and the player is handed back control of Kratos through seamless transitions. World building. Unlike the previous entries, which were loosely based on Greek mythology, this installment transitioned the series to Norse mythology, with the majority of it set in ancient Scandinavia. The world that you explore is richly detailed, full of secrets, and deep with lore. Atreus, Kratos' son, has a particular aptitude for languages and will regularly translate and scribe down bits of text. These are kept in the game's codex, where you can find additional information about enemy behaviors and summaries of the journey. Your talking head companion, Mimir, is a wealth of knowledge and will tell tales about the various characters of the world and expand their backstories, making the world feel alive and lived in. While I wasn't personally invested or particularly intrigued by the world, I can definitely appreciate how much effort went into its construction and meticulously crafted layers. The two blacksmiths that help you on your journey are not only incredibly well written and entertaining, but felt like they'd been there for centuries and have their own backstories and side quests that make them feel established and purposeful. God of War's world building was deeply impressive and begged to be explored. Overall story. I feel like the game's story was stretched a little thin. Your initial goal of climbing the highest peak in the 9 realms to spread your wife's ashes was a beautifully simple and elegant concept that could have played out in 10 hours. Instead, we have this massive world with multiple branching realms and a staggering amount of content to fulfill a simple task. As a result, the plot is diluted and the pacing suffers. While the characters do undergo their own growth and uncover secrets about their past, it ultimately felt like the developers built an entire golf course when I really could have just gone mini golfing. Graphics, 15 out of 15. Character models. The two protagonists, Kratos and Atreus, look incredible. From their armor to their weapons to the subtle changes in their facial expressions, every little detail is rendered with remarkable skill. While the other characters in the game don't look bad by any stretch of the imagination, there was a noticeable difference in their style, as they tended to look a bit stylized as opposed to ultra-realistic. Environments. While the game does place an emphasis on snow and mountains, there are definitely other landscapes and biomes, and each one is more impressive than the last. My personal favorite was the Realm of the Elves, which had a really unique color palette and a high fantasy theme. I would regularly just stop in my tracks, rotate the camera, and admire my surroundings. The details up close in some of these environments were unbelievable. It's hard to believe this is a PS4 game. Special effects. Every visual aspect of God of War just screams AAA big budget. It was all so impressive. Some of the best fire I've ever seen in a game, period. Swinging the Blades of Chaos looked ferocious, and lighting effects were used to create dramatic moments that demanded your attention. Audio, 11 out of 15. Ambience. The orchestral soundtrack did a fine job of supporting the game. Was it Hans Zimmer Gladiator? Hell no. To be totally honest, a lot of it just blended into obscurity for me. The OST fit the mood of the game well, and that's what really matters. Ultimately, though, it didn't really move me. There is a repeating theme sung by the artist Ivor, I really hope I'm pronouncing that right, which helped to give the OST an identity and a cohesive feel. I imagined it being the voice of the mother singing to her husband and son as they persevered on their journey. Boss music. The boss music didn't especially stand out for me either. I can't think of one memorable track. Maybe it was buried behind the outstanding sound design? I'm not sure. I just can't elaborate on it, and that kind of bothers me. After I finished the game, I downloaded the OST and listened to it a couple of times at the gym, and honestly forgot I had music on. It didn't connect with me. I hate to reduce an artist's work to words like generic, but that's what comes to mind. Sound design. This probably isn't unique to God of War, but it really stood out to me here in a good way. I'm going to call it dynamic ambience, and here's what I'm talking about. Anytime you enter a new area, specifically a room or tunnel, the ambience of Kratos and Atreus' voice will change to match that environment, essentially creating reverb when you're in a cave, for example. This was especially noticeable on headphones, and I found it to be really immersive and impressive. The overall voice acting was phenomenal. I think my personal favorite performance was by Baldur, whose emotionally tortured character was brought to life magnificently. Special mention to the two blacksmith brothers, Sindri and Brock, who gave the game a tasteful comedic flair. Performance, 9 out of 10. Frame rate. I played the game at 60 frames per second in 4K, and it was an utter delight. Beyond this, there are no additional graphics options other than lowering the frame rate to 30 frames per second. Stability. I found some of the instances of interacting with objects and pressing circle or square a little touchy, but overall the game was super polished and I never encountered a single moment resembling a glitch. Gameplay, 28 out of 40. Controls. I was thinking really hard for days about how I wanted to describe the feeling of controlling Kratos, and I settled on this. It's like I'm still in the cutscene. It's like you never really fully gain control of him. The over-the-shoulder perspective is a style I have a real aversion to in games. In my personal experience, it's only ever worked like once or twice as a design choice. I grew somewhat accustomed to it in my 20-something hour playthrough, but I still found it inferior. It's like Kratos is on a leash or something, like he's on training wheels. The locked strafing felt and looked goofy. Man, it was just so restrictive. Am I playing Gears of War or God of War? It's almost like this game wants to be a shooter, especially with the frequent gigantic gap between Kratos and his enemies. It always felt like I was having to close the distance and sprint after the enemy, rather than having them in and around me to engage. It felt like there was so much wasted space when I was in a fight. Definitely not how I like to play third-person games like this that encourage dexterity and positioning. Okay, what about exploration? Luckily, it was mostly good. Hucking Kratos' axe at switches was smooth, as was controlling Atreus' aim with his bow. There's a decent amount of climbing that pretty much just involves looking around and pressing circle to jump to the next ledge. These bits broke up the combat nicely, although they really just left me feeling like, oh, more of this? There's a boat that you'll spend a good amount of time in, which felt really good to control. Anytime you reach a dock, the game gives you a huge window to press circle and pull up, which was helpful. Mechanics. I really appreciated the variety of puzzles and mechanics on offer outside of the game's combat. Puzzles were a mix of problem solving, exploration, and memorization, and regularly felt satisfying to solve. Kratos' Leviathan axe is not only his main weapon, but serves as a vital tool as well. The axe comes with special freezing properties that, when thrown at objects, can stop them in place or, in the case of traps, temporarily nullify their hazardous properties. The axe was both easy to control and fun to use. It's in the game's combat where things really start to fall apart. The overwhelming amount of skills for your axe, shield, blades of chaos, and talon bow felt totally unnecessary. This is just straight up quantity over quality. They become increasingly more redundant when you realize that 9 out of 10 times the quickest way to dispose of an enemy is to use your bare fists and build up their stun meter. I just didn't care. There were way too many options for different moves and abilities that I never bothered to use. It's like the sandwich wasn't good enough, so they felt like they just needed to keep adding sauces. No amount of different flavors is going to fix bad ingredients. What at its core is essentially a button masher is disguised with an atrocious amount of hollow distractions. If you're going to give the player special moves and abilities, make them special. Give me like 4 or 5 and make them count. Instead, there are 66 skills for his 3 main weapons and an additional 21 for the talon bow. The talon bow skills were not as big a problem, as they were passive skills that were permanent, which made them feel important. Whereas Kratos' other 66 moves just felt like filler. Who is going to bother to use all of these, let alone remember them all? Sekiro had a lot of moves too, but they mattered, and the enemies demanded that you make use of them in certain ways. In God of War, you can just brute force yourself through most obstacles with the press of a single button. But we're not done yet, because the Leviathan Axe and Blades of Chaos both come with light runic attacks and heavy runic attacks, which are essentially super moves with a cooldown. I didn't manage to find all of these in the game, as they're hidden in chests and behind side quests. If we include these, this brings our total number of extra moves to somewhere in the 3-digit territory, which is Kratos' chest armor, wrist armor, and waist armor can be upgraded, and come with various sockets for gems. This reminded me a lot of Diablo, and I was into it. Kratos also has a space for talismans, which can grant him special abilities and stat bonuses. Pacing. The game moved along at a really nice pace with a mixture of action and puzzles. The story took a bit of a dip in the second half, but overall, with the semi-helpful compass and various hints from NPCs, it was a good ride. UI and UE. I initially found the menus to be very overwhelming, as I'm hoping that my explanation of the mechanics was able to illustrate. Besides the fact that I wasn't a big fan of the aesthetic either, I think the UI and menus were organized enough, and once you got a grasp of everything that was involved, helpful. Boss quality. The bosses in God of War can be split up into 4 main categories: main bosses, trolls, ancients, and Valkyries. One of the main bosses you face off against 3 separate times, leaving the game with 5 total main bosses. Of those 5, I think maybe 2 really impressed me. The fights against Baldur, other than the impressive set pieces and cinematic quality, were just dumb fights. He has an incredibly padded health bar, and you just chase him down and punch him in the face over and over. Man, it was frustrating. The Valkyries were pretty sweet, I gotta be honest. I found 1 or 2 of them incredibly challenging, and equipped with a wide range of moves and patterns that were satisfying to overcome. It's a shame that these were optional, because this is what the game needed more of. My favorite fight was against a massive dragon named Hraeslir, which felt like vintage God of War. But the game really needed like 3 or 4 more of these types of encounters that have cool mechanics, impressive set pieces, and a sense of scale that is different from the rest of the combat you do in the game. Enemy variety. I've gone back and forth about this one a bunch. The enemies in God of War come in a pretty good variety of shapes and sizes. Some are better taken care of with Atreus' bow, and others, well, you just bash them with your fists. The designs were genuinely cool, and every single category of enemy had a unique finishing death blow animation. Where I'm not so sure God of War passes the sniff test is in its use of a numerical system to represent an enemy's difficulty level and an overuse of reskins. Gameplay variety. The gameplay variety in God of War is immense. The world is packed full of so much to explore and secret areas within secret areas. Puzzles come in a variety of styles, collectibles are plentiful, and it always felt like there was something new to do. Replayability. Once you complete the main story, you can continue to freely explore the world, which was a cool feature. The option for New Game Plus becomes available after you complete the game once, and not only lets you keep all of your inventory, upgrades, and skills, but features new enemy behavior, unlockable armor sets, and several unique features that make it worth exploring at least once. Bonus 1 out of 3. God of War offers assist modes for its QuickTime events. Overall, 83 out of 100. Great. There are aspects of God of War that were incredible, but for me overall, it was not. What it was a great game. A special, immersive experience and state-of-the-art in many ways. I was entertained and moved, and on that front, the game absolutely excelled. Its presentation is S tier, even if its fundamentals are not.